I had the worst bathroom emergency of my life at the mall. I should have known something was wrong. Last night I was out grabbing a late dinner at the mall with a few friends. Nothing crazy, just one of those casual meals where everyone's tired, the mall is half empty, and you're mostly there because nobody felt like cooking. There were 4 of us, me, Jake, Melissa, and Yinka. Dinner was great. We hung around talking for a bit, paid the bill, and headed out. At that point, the mall was already starting to shut down for the night. About 5 minutes after we left the restaurant, my stomach suddenly felt like it had just remembered something extremely important. At first, it was just a weird cramp. Then it escalated, fast. You know that moment when your body gives you that very clear internal message of, "Hey, we need a bathroom, now." Yeah, that moment. I froze for a second and immediately started clenching every muscle known to mankind. Jake noticed first. "Trey, you good?" I nodded like a liar. I was not good, not even close. Another wave hit, and I knew I had about 30 seconds before my dignity expired. So I turned around and speed-walked back toward the restaurant like a man with a mission. Behind me I heard Melissa say, "Why is he walking like that?" Yinka very calmly said, "Something tells me he is in a situation." He was absolutely correct. I got back to the restaurant and tried the door. Locked. Lights off. Staff still inside cleaning. I knocked. Then I knocked harder. Then I started banging on the glass like a man trying to escape a submarine. One of the staff looked up, made eye contact with me, and slowly pointed to the sign on the door. Closed. I looked at him with the most desperate face I have ever made in my life. He just shrugged. At that exact moment, my stomach did something that felt less like digestion and more like a countdown timer. So I ran to the main mall bathrooms, completely shut down, metal security gates pulled down like it was the end of the world. At this point, my brain switched into pure survival mode. No bathrooms, no options, just consequences. I stepped outside into the parking lot, trying to figure out what on earth I was going to do. That's when I spotted it. A bush. A very thick bush near the edge of the parking lot. And in that moment, that bush became my only ally in this cruel universe. I hurried over there faster than I've ever moved in my life and just let it go. And when I say let it go, I mean my body produced the most violent, catastrophic event it has ever created. I'm pretty sure nearby wildlife evacuated. When the situation finally ended, I realized something horrifying. I had absolutely nothing to wipe with. No napkins, no tissues, nothing. Just my terrible life choices. So, I did what I had to do, and I'm not proud of it. I managed to clean up the worst of it with my hand, then quietly snuck over to one of those outdoor drinking fountains nearby and rinsed off like some kind of guilty raccoon. The whole time I was praying nobody would walk by and ask questions I could never answer. Eventually, I made it back to the car where the others were waiting. Nobody said anything for about 30 seconds. Finally, Jake looked at me and said, "You good now?" I just nodded. Melissa rolled the window down a little. Yinka looked at me, gave a small approving nod and said, "Sometimes life gives a man difficult decisions." And honestly, he wasn't wrong. I drove home in complete silence. When I got back, I spent a solid 40 minutes scrubbing my hands in the shower like I was trying to remove evidence from a crime scene. To the landscaping crew that works at that mall, if you ever discover what happened behind that bush, I am deeply, deeply sorry. So we're moving on to the next narration. If you've reached this point, don't forget to like and share this video with more people who enjoy stories based on real events. I think I stole my dog. This happened when I was about 10 years old. One evening, my parents were visiting my grandma at the small apartment complex where she lived. It was one of those quiet places where everyone knows everyone, and nothing exciting ever really happens, except on that day. My parents noticed a tiny dog sitting behind a row of decorative bushes near the parking lot. At first they thought it might belong to one of the residents, but the little thing wasn't moving. It was just sitting there, watching people walk by like it was waiting for someone. It was a ridiculously small chihuahua, the kind that looks like it could be defeated by a strong gust of wind. She had a collar on, but there were no tags. My parents asked around, knocked on a few doors, and waited for a bit to see if someone would come looking for her. Nobody did. Eventually they brought her inside, gave her some water and a little food, and when they came home that night, the dog came with them. They told me they'd keep an eye out for lost dog posters or someone asking around the neighborhood. None ever appeared. So the tiny mystery dog became part of the family. We named her Pixel, mostly because she was so small she looked like she was rendered in low resolution. Pixel attached herself to me almost immediately. She followed me everywhere. If I got up, she got up. If I walked to another room, she marched behind me like a tiny bodyguard that weighed 4 pounds. At night, she'd curl up beside me like a little warm loaf of bread. And honestly, growing up there were plenty of times when Pixel felt like my only real friend. Middle school is rough. Tiny, loyal dog? Very helpful. Fast forward to 2016. Pixel was getting old and started having health problems. She slowed down a lot and eventually started having trouble breathing, so I took her to the vet. They ran a few tests and did an X-ray. The vet explained that she had some heart problems, which sadly wasn't unusual for a dog her age. But while looking at the X-ray, the vet suddenly pointed at something and asked a question that caught me completely off guard. "Did you know she has a microchip?" I had no idea what they were talking about. Back when we found her, I didn't even know microchips for pets existed. And suddenly a thought hit me that had never crossed my mind in 13 years. Pixel might not have been a stray. She might have belonged to someone. I didn't say anything about it. At that point, we had already had her for most of my life, and she was near the end of hers. Tracking down a potential original owner after all that time felt complicated in a way I didn't even know how to process. Pixel passed away later that year. Losing her hit me harder than I expected. Even now, a small part of me wonders if someone somewhere once put up a missing dog poster and never found their tiny chihuahua. But another part of me knows that for 13 years, that little dog had a pretty good life. She had snacks, warm beds, and a kid who thought she was the greatest dog on earth. And if I'm being honest, Pixel also stole an unbelievable number of sandwiches over the years. So if she did have a previous owner out there somewhere, I just hope they know their dog eventually became a professional food thief and lived a long, spoiled life. And honestly, I think she would have been proud of that. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like the video and subscribe to Foys Studio for more entertaining stories and moments from around the internet. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think.